All right, let's take a look at this piece of video here. The Lever tweets out, Trump winning would strengthen the elites who control the Dem Party. This is David Sirota making the case that the best way to endanger the political prospects of the Democratic establishment is to not vote for Joe Biden, since he doesn't explicitly say that, but vote against Donald Trump. I wonder what that could possibly mean. Right. So let's take a look at David Sirota's video here.
First and foremost thought on Donald Trump. If he becomes president, it's not only bad for stuff like climate policy, it's not only bad for stuff like corporate regulation, the economy, et cetera, et cetera. Donald Trump winning, in my view, would significantly strengthen the corporate-aligned politicians, media outlets, and consultants that currently control the Democratic Party.
Oh, my
The
God.
same class of people who obstruct progress on everything. It would so significantly strengthen the
I don't need
Democratic
this. I don't
Party
need this working class hero
Donald
crap.
Trump winning, that it's not actually insane to believe that that Democratic Party leadership in some ways wants Donald Trump to win, or at least would be absolutely fine with Donald Trump winning. So you're probably wondering, well, wait a minute, how does Donald Trump winning strengthen the corporate masters of the Democratic Party?
No, I'm not wondering that. I'm not wondering that. Didn't we have this conversation like 8 years ago and then again 4 years ago? We all understand what you're going to say, which is that Trump emboldens the Democratic establishment because they fundraise against Trump. Yes, we all know that. You know what also emboldens the Democratic establishment? Electing it fucking president. That's what also emboldens the Democratic establishment. It's almost like the Democratic establishment is not influenced by Democratic input. Win or lose, the corporate bosses rule the party because that is fundamentally what the party is. It is a corporate structure. And so the idea that you're going to teach Democrats a lesson by voting against them and therefore the progressives are going to take over, yeah, that's not true. That's not true. We've known this for 8 years that that's not true. Now, if you wanted to make an argument that the only way to really radicalize people against the Democratic Party is to prove how destructive they would be with power, that's an argument I could buy. That's why I said in 2020, actually more people are going to be radicalized against the Democratic Party if Biden wins than if Trump wins. Take right now for an example. If Trump were overseeing this genocide in Gaza, the abandoned Biden voters in Michigan would be organizing for the Democratic nominee now, whatever corporate piece of shit it was, Newsom, Whitmer, whoever. They would be organizing for the Democrats because, oh my God, Trump is funding a genocide. We have to get him out. The fact that Biden's overseeing the genocide means that now they're boycotting Biden. So yes, having a failed Democratic president in power does radicalize people against the Democratic Party. But guess what? We're doing that right now. That's happening right now. So the next step past that is to withdraw support from the Democratic Party, to boycott the Democratic Party. If you're just going to go vote for them again after you radicalize people against them, what's the point of that? There is no point of that. The only point of that is to rationalize a vote for a pro-genocide party, which is really what David Sirota is trying to do here. And this is what we're going to see now. You're going to have to rationalize in your head some excuse for rubber stamping a genocide by voting for the quote-unquote lesser evil, which is a ridiculous formulation now on its face.
Every election, it's the same shit. This is no time for talk about radical solutions. This is a 4-alarm emergency. It's a 5-alarm emergency. We need all hands on deck. We can disagree later. Okay, you know who they said that about? Mitt Romney.
Right.
Mitt
exactly.
Romney. It's not even about Donald Trump. If you go back in happier times before the actors that he abused came out and told their tales, Joss Whedon did a video about the apocalyptic hellscape that would arrive if Mitt Romney were elected president. Started talking about how he needed to learn parkour. And obviously he was being funny, but but also being serious that it was going to be, oh my God, if Mitt Romney wins, how would Mitt Romney have been radically different from what Obama did in his second term? What did Obama do in his second term that was radically different from what Mitt Romney would have done? They do this every election. Trump is a unique threat on Twitter.
Right. Yeah.
In terms of his policies, he gave tax cuts to rich people. Every fucking Republican is going to do that. Democrats find other ways to pay off their hedge fund buddies and their Wall Street donors, just usually through inertia and inaction and blaming Republicans for the fact that they didn't do anything to rein these people in. But every election they play the same game because they have to. Like, what else? What other reason do they have to present for you actually going out and voting for these psychopaths?
Right.
Because it would reimpose the rhetorical parameter.
Oh, I got to back it up a few seconds here just to.
So you're probably wondering, well, wait a minute. How does Donald Trump winning strengthen the corporate masters of the Democratic Party? Because it would reimpose the rhetorical parameters that those Democratic Party bosses want. They want a discourse that is purely anti-Trump all the time, a discourse that exclusively focuses on Trump's outbursts and insanity and crimes, a discourse that marginalizes all other topics as some sort of distraction from the central cause of opposing Donald Trump.
Jane, you ignorant slut.
Yeah. What have we had these past 4 years but that? That's exactly what we've had these past 4 years.
That's what I was thinking. That's exactly what we have.
How have you expanded the Overton window under Joe Biden? Under Joe Biden, you couldn't even pass paid family leave through the Senate. Under Joe Biden, we, and by we I mean Jews, literally we, cannot protest a genocide without being called anti-Semites. So what rhetorical space has been opened up for us under Joe Biden? None. None at all. The parameters are the exact same. It's all blue team good, red team bad. Trump is the main threat. As Russell said, if Trump was not the main threat, it would have been Mitt Romney. Greenwald tweeted out a headline from 2012 just last week. This is the most important election of our lifetime, Obama versus Romney. So they're always going to do this. That's the two-party game. That's the two-party game. They will always do that. The idea that we have more space to talk about bigger issues. We have more space to talk about bigger issues with Trump out of the picture is nonsense. Trump was not in the conversation in 2021, and you couldn't get paid family leave through the Senate. Biden did not even take a meeting with Joe Manchin to negotiate, to even try to twist his arm into signing something as simple as paid family leave into law. And you're going to act like we have some opportunity without Trump there that we wouldn't have with Trump there. It's just not true. Time has not borne that out. That would have been an interesting theory to float in 2018, 2019, but the results are in. And that's bullshit. And the reason that's bullshit is because of what I said before. The Democratic Party is not responsive to Democratic input at all. At all. It doesn't matter if they win or lose. You're correct in the sense that forcing them to lose is not going to teach them a lesson. Like, that's a ridiculous argument. So if on that score, that is technically correct, but that's an old argument. We learned that lesson 8 years ago. Literally 8 years ago. And you're still making this argument to who? To people who are still stuck in this. I'm sorry. This is a distinction that we tried to smooth over as best we could. I think we made a good faith effort. It's a PMC left argument.
Yeah, this is something I'm going to do more research on. I was watching a really interesting video that was actually about England, but it also had broader connotations. It was talking about it really got into the mechanisms by which neoliberalism has destroyed wealth, even as you have, this is the mystery, right? You have increasing productivity gains. You've never had technology helping productivity so much, and everyone keeps getting poorer while the rich keep getting richer. And essentially what this video was arguing is after the collapse of the colonial holdings and the empires and such, the direct control of these countries, all of these economies went to financialization and tax havens, where the wealth of these countries is extracted into these tax havens, where you're still getting the money, but it's through more clandestine means. Now all of this wealth is held within the banking system and within the investor class. And that is a big part of why democracies are no longer responsive, because the connection between consumer choice, between voting, and power and wealth has been completely severed. There's a completely invisible to the average person economy going on up here, and everybody else is down here. And they don't need you anymore. Right. They don't really need you interacting with the money supply and the economy in the way that they used to. So that's why the Democrats are not responsive to democratic input. It's why Hollywood is not responsive to ratings. It's all, they're all in a completely hermetically sealed world of wealth accumulation amongst themselves that has very little to do with what's happening with people. That's why you had a runaway stock market in the middle of a fucking pandemic where everyone was home, because those two things are not connected anymore.
Yeah, and that is actually part of the appeal of Trump. That's what Anish Shivani picked up on very early on, that there's an analog quality to how Trump made his money. He builds hotels, he charges people to stay in his hotels, right? Selling products to people, moving product, right? That exists on that lower economic, in that lower economic world, right? Makes a lot of money in that lower economic world, but it's there. It's on the level of schmata, right? I'm hawking product, right? Here we go.
They want a discourse that casts all pressure on the Democratic Party, not just as a distraction, but as traitorous allyship with Donald Trump. That's what the Democratic Party leadership wants. A Trump victory in November gives the current Democratic Party leadership exactly those rhetorical conditions which allow them to further suppress all pressure on the Democratic Party itself. So if you want to help the corporate center of the Democratic Party, the corrupt, corporate aligned leaders of the current Democratic Party, if you want to help them, it seems to me your choice in this election is very clear. Vote for Donald Trump.
What rhetorical pressure have you successfully applied to the Democratic Party under Joe Biden? Like I said, you can't even protest a genocide without being called an anti-Semite. You can't even get paid family leave through the House. You let the Senate parliamentarian block a minimum wage bill. What are you talking about? If you're going to make this argument, you have to be able to point to something that you have accomplished over these past 4 years that would give some legitimacy to your argument that, see, with Trump out of the way, there are expanded opportunities. But you can make no such argument. And so Jimmy Dore, our friend who brought this to our focus yesterday, actually, he did it. He found a way to spin voting for Biden as a way of fighting the corporate corruption of the Democratic Party. Hey, you want to fight against corporate corruption of the Democrats? Then vote for Biden. Yes, the only way to fight the corrupt corporate-aligned leaders of the Democratic Party is to vote for them. Absolute genius. The key here is that he says this with a super serious look on his face. Even I have to tip my hat to this kind of next-level mindfuckery and gaslighting. Now, he did a segment on this last night, and I want to play a piece of this because this is a good point as well.
The way you hurt the Democratic Party is making them lose and then stop donating to them and stop making them a viable party. The way you keep corporations donating to the Democratic Party and owning our politicians in the Democratic Party is by letting people know you're willing to keep voting for them. That's the only thing that keeps their power going, is that they know people will keep voting for them. If the corporations thought Democrats would never get elected again, they would also stop donating to them and they would move on to who they thought would be getting elected. So this is his prescription.
So that is a very important point. Okay, that is a very important point because the power base of the Democratic Party are the corporations. It's the corporate money. The votes are the votes from people like us are what signal to the corporations that bribing Democrats is a good investment. So if we withdraw support from the Democrats, that hurts the Democrats because it signals to corporations not to bribe Democrats anymore, because it doesn't do you any good to bribe a loser. Case in point, Disney started donating to Don't Say Gay Republicans again in Florida. Why'd they do that? They're doing that now because Florida is no longer a swing state. It's now a red state. Right. So there's no point giving money to Democrats in Florida anymore, because Democrats don't have power in Florida anymore. So if they want to curry favor with the government, they have to curry favor with the Republicans. So that's how you get corporate money out of the Democratic Party, by withdrawing support, so that the Democratic Party is no longer a good investment for corporations. So that was a very good point. And that is one more example of how the actual constituency that matters to Democrats is not the people. It's the corporate donors. And you have to create a crisis of confidence within the party for the corporate donors so that they don't invest in Democrats anymore. That's how you hurt the corporate bosses of the Democratic Party, not by rubber stamping their genocide.
You have to undo the last several decades of Democratic politics. You have to rebuild unions, which were at one time the backbone of the Democratic Party, and allow them to take over the Democrats. If you look at how union bosses and Teamster bosses spoke in the 60s, they sound like fucking Marxists. The core assumptions of the working class, the redistributive assumptions, the belief in what the responsibilities of government were extremely radical by our standards. It really shows you when you go back and you look at these guys who were dismissed by the new left as Archie Bunkers and retrograde and regressive and reactionary. They were far, far more radical than anything you would hear from certainly a Bernie Sanders, the furthest left outposts of the Democratic Party today. And that's because the Democratic Party's base was a worker base. Right. You have to get back to that. You have to basically undo the Clinton revolution. Or really, I don't think it's possible. I think you just have to get rid of that party and build a new one based on those premises. I think the Democratic Party is beyond saving. With the Wall Street money, it's gotten so woven into it. It's like trying to get bubble gum out of hair. There's just nothing you can do with it at this point.
Yes.
And on Sirota, we all talked about this a little bit. God, what would it do to how we look at a lot of our most legendary journalists if they had to do hot takes? Right, Sirota is a fine journalist. Some of the best reporting. His thing is the lever, right?
Yeah, so they did great stuff with East Palestine, on the Baltimore Bridge collapse. Like, their investigative stuff is very good.
On Boeing, too. Some of the best articles about Boeing are the lever. Yeah. Unfortunately, cable news set a new standard of the journalist pundit, where part of being a journalist is giving takes, whether it's through your own outlet or accepting invitations to round tables. You're expected to give takes as journalists now. And as we have discovered from people like Jordan Sheridan, from people like David Sirota, from people like Ryan Grimm, a lot of these people are much better journalists than political thinkers. It has not been to the benefit of their reputations to feel the need to give takes. Now, in all the cases I just mentioned, except for Grimm works for The Intercept, but the others are independent. Shut the fuck up. Do journalism. Nobody has anything to say about your journalism. Just do journalism. Stop giving your opinions. You're not good at it. That's ego. You don't even have to do it. Stop doing it.
Yeah, you don't even have to do it. Exactly.
You're not working for some network that tells you have to take this guest appearance. Just don't do this anymore. Don't talk about these things. You're stupid. You're stupid. I know it hurts your ego because you're actually a very good journalist. But on this level, you're clearly a moron, or somebody's paying you to say these things. Now, if no one's paying you to say these things and you care about your journalism, do you want to give the impression that you're corrupted by money and influence? Because that's the impression you're giving. That's all you're accomplishing by saying something like this. So stop. Just stop.
Please clap.